setting up your macros. This is Nutrition 101. We really wanted to make sure that we could give back to the person that right now is just looking for a really good position to start. So let's go ahead and let's dive into today's video, which is setting up your macronutrients. In today's video, we're going to tell you how to set up your macros. So hang out. At the end of this video, you will have some set macros for you. Now, as far as the current calorie allotment, we're just going to use an arbitrary number of 1,800 calories because I do think that that is roughly about the ideal maintenance level for most women out there that maybe have a history of chronic dieting. Now, there may be some outliers, just like there's outliers in everything, but for the sake of this video, we're going to use an 1,800 calorie example. Now, as far as calories in, calories out, like I said yesterday, we have to standardize calories in, calories out. So with that being said, the calories in will be the 1,800. The calories out will be 8 to 10,000 steps per day, walking, moving, doing your normal stuff. 4 training sessions per week, maybe 45 to 60 minutes per training session, making sure that your lifestyle is in order, trying to sleep as good as you can. All those things are going to be standardized, okay? Now, moving forward, where do we want to start with dietary fat intake? Dietary fat intake is extremely valuable. Number one, in making sure that it fuels your endocrine system. Dietary fat also provides essential nutrients to the cholesterol, which is the king of the hormonal cascade. So basically, dietary fat, as long as they're good dietary fats, help to provide ample amounts of signaling to cholesterol, which fuels your entire hormonal cascade. So you need dietary fat. So all these people that are coming to me on very low fat diets, hormones are shut down, probably don't want to do that. The second macro we're going to be calculating is going to be protein. Now, protein is essential for helping you build new structural tissues, i.e. lean body mass, and it's the most thermogenic macronutrient that there is. So if you think you can overeat protein and get fat, probably not going to happen. All right. Now, the third one we're going to consider is carbohydrates. Where do you start those off? And then the fourth, and definitely not least, is going to be fiber. So let's go ahead and let's go back up the chart there and start with dietary fat. As far as dietary fats go, we like to start people off anywhere between 0.25 all the way up to maybe 0.5 grams times total calories. So that would be 0.25 times 1,800, and I believe that would give you roughly about 45 grams of fat. Now, if you went 0.3 times 1,800, it would give you 540 calories, and that would be 60 grams of fat, just to get you started somewhere. Now, the higher up that spectrum you go, 0.35, 0.4, that fat number just gets higher and higher and higher, which does have some application for some individuals right now that may be suffering from insulin resistance. These individuals already have a bunch of carbohydrate, a bunch of blood sugar, either from over-consuming food or from high stress or a myriad of different other metabolic problems. So for that individual, we'd actually want to start them off with a higher fat, lower carbohydrate intake. We'll talk about that later. Number 2 is going to be protein. Where do we start protein off at? Now, there's a lot of different mathematical equations when it comes to protein. How much protein should you be eating on a daily basis? And the number that I'm going to stick with is roughly 0.3 to 0.4 grams of protein per calorie, okay? So again, 0.3 times 1,800 gives you 540 calories from protein, which I believe is about 135 grams of protein to get started, which is a fantastic number. Now, if you happen to be like, oh, I can eat more protein than this, my gut can handle it, and I feel like I want to eat more protein, remember, over-consuming in protein likely will not lead to any negative side effects other than making you more jacked and helping you lose some body fat. With that being said, moving on to number 3, what we're doing is talking about carbohydrates and how many carbs do you need. Now, depending on how high you took your fat, if you're insulin resistant or insulin sensitive, I'd probably go at the lower end of the range, maybe 0.25, 0.3, 0.35. Higher end of that range would be if you were insulin resistant and you know you have high blood sugar or you know you have a lot of body fat, okay? You could go 0.4, 0.45. You could take those fats up, but be mindful that as you take those fats up, using that 1,800 calorie allotment, it is going to drastically decrease those carbohydrates, which for the insulin resistant individual is actually going to help them improve their fasting blood sugar and help them improve their insulin levels overall. Get them back to a normal rise and relaxed spike, okay? So with that carbohydrate, you just fill what's left. Now, as far as dietary fiber goes, this is very important for elimination, or what we refer to as phase 3 detoxification of the body, okay? You need to be pooping. You need to be going to the bathroom at least every single day. If you're not going to the bathroom every single day, you need to consider, what do I need to do in order to basically get my bowels going to the bathroom every day so that I can actually eliminate the waste that needs to be getting into the toilet, and it can actually help the internal health of your metabolism. So as far as dietary fiber goes, where do we start there? Typically, 10 to 15 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories ingested is going to be enough to be able to help you keep your large intestine or your bowels clean and going to the bathroom every day. Now, if you have a history of constipation, that's another problem. We'll talk about it in another video. But for the sake of this one, let's go ahead and get moving, okay? Now, there are some key considerations that I want to leave you guys with. Number one is going to be that carbohydrates actually help to improve metabolic functions. What I mean by improved metabolic functions is this, simply this: glucose sends signals to increase or decrease a hormone called leptin. Leptin then sends signals throughout the entire physiology, okay? We're talking about your thyroid, we're talking about reproductive health, we're talking about your brain, we're talking about your heart, we're talking about your bones, we're talking about your muscles, we're talking about all that stuff. Those glucose molecules need to get in, and they need to send those signals so that you can do your job. This is typically why so many women after the age of maybe 35, 40 or so on actually develop hypothyroidism, is because they're always dieting, they're on low carbohydrate diets, and thus leptin serum is dramatically low. And when leptin is low, guess what? We're not getting good signals to the thyroid. So you need to consider that. Number three thing is that carbohydrates are essential for anaerobic performance or anaerobic exercise. Think about every time you lift a weight, every time you're trying to get strong, get another rep in the gym, lifting against resistance, glucose is required to do this. That's science. Can't change it. It is what it is. Next thing we're going to talk about is carbohydrates can actually help aid in some of the relaxing female hormones such as serotonin and GABA, okay? These things are actually very, very important for calming the female physiology, because part of the female physiology is highly predicated on a hormone called progesterone, which is calming. If you have carbohydrates coming into the diet, the physiology can actually relax and it's not under a lot of stress. Women going on a ketogenic style diet or practicing fasting all the time and things like that, I would not recommend that for any woman. Protein is the powerhouse macronutrient. I think I said this before. You can't really overeat protein and expect a negative to happen. So by all means, eat more protein. Fats will help aid in satiety. Maybe some of you are walking around now and you're like, oh my God, I'm just so darn hungry. Well, make sure you're having some fat in each meal. Like, I'll give you an example. Yesterday for my lunch, I had some grilled chicken, I had broccoli, I had an apple, and then I'm like, there's literally like no fat in this meal, maybe 6 grams of fat from the chicken. So I took a guacamole cup and I added it to that, and we were actually able to add some fat, slow down digestion, because I knew I wasn't going to be working out for probably at least an hour and a half, and we made that happen. The insulin-resistant individual, I do want to close up here. The individual that's got a lot of body fat, they're insulin-resistant, they should be starting with a higher fat intake, a moderate to lower carbohydrate intake, okay? And obviously you can use the equations there, but be mindful that these things kind of work on like a sliding scale. So if you happen to be somebody that has a lot of body fat, or you know you're insulin-resistant, keep those carbohydrates a little bit lower, maybe between 50 and 125 grams of carbohydrates, and get those fats up there, maybe around 70, 75, or 85 grams of fat, and just go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Hopefully you all found it helpful. If you did, go ahead, like, share, all that stuff, save it, and share it with your friends. We really appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Bye.